Valentines, Olu, Ndo, Obe, Ndu man, and the Asso. Oh, when you walk again, how well convince you and the baby, no, ye chief father. No one will the bent in Yaya, the chief father. At the age of between 5 and 6. Where do they come dunya biga mwana na munye o meli de beli na ndi bebe achoro ko chi fada chi convince her na kawa opalo o chi fada o buno uchechu o ngoro ki je makate wa ya ko ya ye o ngoro o pra du chechu Patron, the honor will put the idea to walk off. Not what you have chief about. The way matches you in that bomb, matches your own over no, over your mother, no shit. I will have here with you.
To help the women more, he established a marriage training center, or you call it social center, or you call it, now we call it here, a marriage course. But that was not only marriage course, because it was a center where the pagan girls were taught how to keep themselves clean, how to cook, how to keep the house, all about house keeping. And not only that, they were taught, prepared for the sacraments of baptism, penance, and Holy Communion.
The sacredness of marriage cannot change. Blessed Tansi saw it, encouraged them to sacramental marriages, encouraged men to love their wife. Do you know Blessed Tansi was the person who told men, you don't call your wife when you're your property. Call her name. If her name is Teresa, call her name. Because it's part of you, not your property. And I always tell them that he's one of the first person who tried to emancipate us.
The girls were being intimidated, and he was fighting for their liberation and helping them to practice their religion. The widows were getting awful treatment. He was on their side. Even the family, he was visiting families, those that have family problem. He used to go and settle them. He was doing home visitation.
And of course, when he preached, he was like a flaming sword. No one could say, I don't remember what he said. No, we remembered what he said. Some still remember some phrases from what he said because of the sincerity, clarity, also fire in his words.
Your confessions. I'm afraid of how you make your confessions. Agularians, your communion. I'm afraid. Agularians, so many things about you. So he gave preachings that fills the heart, that makes you happy, and then encourages you towards perfection. You see, that was why he was telling them, no, don't do this. Come this side to perfect your life and then prepare it for heaven.
He did not spare people. When he sees people doing anything bad, he would tell them as that he would correct them in a fatherly way so that they will change. He lived his life as a perfect priest. When you see him, you know that you have really met a holy man, a man of God, somebody that has dedicated himself, his whole life to the service of God and helping humanity. As I said, not only helping them to be holy or to go to church or become Christians, but even to be real human beings. he was helping them in every way to earn their living.
I find in him a normal priest, because quite often when we use the name or the qualification saint, we tend to give the impression that that person is so detached that we cannot emulate him. But Cyprian, Tansi Michael Tansi, was a normal priest. He was ordained a normal priest, like any of us was ordained. And he had his normal ministry in the parish and grew in his ministry. That is a point I want to underline. The fact of his growing in the ministry, the fact of his letting himself being drawn gradually by God towards his goodness. I avoid the word sanctity, but it frightens sometimes because it almost gives you the impression that it's something unattainable, something for a select few. So I prefer the word goodness, which is also another transcendent quality, attribute of God. And if a person attains full goodness, the person attains also sanctity.
Even my mom was one of the beneficiaries. He collected so many women, Oba Maria, and housed them, training them to become good housewives. Not only prayers, he was telling them, showing them how to cook. He was showing them how to walk.
We did not know when he went to bed, because he was awake when we went to bed, and he was awake when we woke up in the morning. How much time then he spent at night in the chapel, and how much time in bed, I don't know. But he was a man of prayer. Moreover, he was ascetical, the type that I would admire, but I would not imitate. He ate very little. His cook had not much work. But when he had visitors, he made them happy. He gave them nice things. He was not rich, but he was clean, tidy.
Being a parish priest of where Father Tansi worked, I think it's a rare privilege. But when I came in here, I was told that Father Tansi lived where I'm living now. And I said, wow, am I not blessed? I'm blessed. Working where Father Tansi works is a wonderful experience because you meet people who met him, people who knew him, people he taught their lives, those he preached to, and they say wonderful things about him, and you can't just but enjoy that, and then telling yourself, this man did a lot of good works. And then you go to the villages, you hear people talk about Father Tansi, what he did, and you encourage. And then you feel, let us do more to be like Father Tansi. Let us preach more to be like Father Tansi. Let us continue what he started. And we keep on looking up to him, waiting when the church will declare Message.
We were not surprised in Dunukofia when he went to the monastery. Many people said, we knew something like that would happen because he prayed a lot. He was reading Dom Marmion, Christ, the Ideal of a Monk. I don't know how I knew, but I knew he was reading the book when he was in Dunukofia as parish priest.
Father Cyprian came in 1950, and I entered the monastery in 1954. So Cyprian was here 4 years, senior to myself. But he wasn't too sure whether Cyprian was going to stay here as a monk. And so after 2 years, he'd finished his novitiate and made his profession. And that's how I knew him. He was a professed monk in simple vows.
He went to the monastery without knowing anything about monastic life. So, any person listening to that story is interesting. That from his background, from traditional religion, from the people who want to serve God, they want to give themselves entirely to God. Now, Tansi saw this, and this is what he entered the seminary for. This is what he has been praying for. That attitude, that turning to God entirely, is very attractive to priests.
For the next 10 years, I lived with Cyprian, got to know him on a daily level, and the last 3 years of his life, we worked together in the garden. And that's where I came to know him very, very closely. And I got to know all about his background, his life in Nigeria, and the love he had for the people. He was very, very dedicated to the whole Cistercian life. He was very, very thorough in everything he did. He was a small priest like myself. I think that's why we got on so well together. And he used to ask me a lot of questions, and I used to be able to tell him about my life in England. He told me about his life in Nigeria, about the school, studies. He found it very difficult. It was all done in Latin. He wasn't a great scholar, but he had a great application. He could really get down to things and study hard. It didn't come easy for him. And of course, he was ordained. He had wonderful priests out in Nigeria, but he had this great desire to have further his own spiritual life and the life of the people, the life of the church. And that's where the monastic ideal came to mind.
God called him that early time so that he can be the foundation of this monastic way of life in Nigeria. You can see the type of vocation we are having here. Probably it's Father Tansi's doing, calling on them, beckoning on them to come and witness this new way of life and to embrace it. Many thought that we Africans can't live it. But to my surprise, you see that as Dom Ambrose, our late Dom Ambrose, so they said, it seems that we are all quite religious, and we are called especially to live this monastic life. A solitude life, a quiet life, a conducive environment where he can contact with his God and pray efficiently. Pray not so much vocally, but have direct contact and meditate effectively. Here in Africa, we have that grace which Europeans had before. We have many vocations before, and I can say that this is our time. Father Tansi, he is that mirror that shows us what we can be if we want to, that we can live the life.
His health wasn't too strong at the time. He'd worked all his monastic life inside, in bookbinding and in the refectory, and they thought a change would help him, especially if he was going to work outside. The fresh air would help him, and that's where he came to the garden to help me. And that's where I got to know him better, because we could talk day by day, get to know each other very well. I had a great admiration for him. One little thing I like to tell, because I mentioned it to the tribune who came here before the beatification, but they didn't think that it was a good thing to bring it to the fore. Because when Nigeria got its independence, I congratulated Mark and Cyprian. Everything was going to go well in Nigeria. Everything was in place for them. They got a good education system going, finance was organised, the legal system was organised, universities, hospitals organised, and everything was going well. But Cyprian doubted that. He said, no, no, no. And I wonder what he meant really. But it came true that when the Balkan War came, they lost everything. And Cyprian almost foresaw that. He was very sad for his people because he realised that he wouldn't be going back with them to meet them again. but he certainly had a foretaste of what was going to lie ahead for them.
I went to look for books for my thesis. I was writing a doctoral thesis on sacrifice in Igbo traditional religion as an introduction to the Christian sacrifice. So I spent about 2 months in London. I made out time to go to Mount St. Bernard, and there I insisted I would serve his Mass. In those days, concelebration was not the usual thing. So each monk, priest, said the Mass in a small chapel, a small altar, and then side altar. And then there was the big community Mass together, where one person said Mass. So I served his Mass, and of course I had the opportunity to speak with him. They didn't talk to one another, they made signs, but they were allowed to talk to a visitor. I found him the same calm and peaceful person that we ever knew. Obviously, the monastery made him even more calm.
He told me about Aguileri when he was parish priest with Father Mark. And Father Mark came and joined him 2 years later. We had 2 Nigerian monks here. We were hoping to make a foundation in Nigeria, but we couldn't find a suitable site, and we hadn't got the money to make the foundation at the time. And Father Luke, who went out, came back disappointed that he couldn't find a suitable place, but on the way back he met a father or missionary bishop, Bishop Peters. He was a Milkiel missionary bishop, and he told him his story and said, well, I can get you a piece of land in the Cameroons, which borders Nigeria. And when Father Luke told the community, it was understandable that Cyprian and Mark were very disappointed. They were hoping that the new monastery would be founded in their own country. But again, you see, the Lord works in so different mysterious ways, because the foundation at Bamenda went ahead. Cyprian was going to be novice master at the new monastery, and the first party went out, and Bamenda came to be the first African monastery from Mount St. Bernard.
Blessed Tansi worked hard not only to live the life as a monk or to die saintly, but he desired that this noble way of life, this contemplative way of life, cessation life, will be brought home to his hometown in this very country, Nigeria. And as you said, it's unfortunately that he died before the time, but I will say today his dream is realized in our lives, since we are the great daughter house of this very monastery of Mount St. Bernard, which he dreamed to bring to Nigeria. And as God may have it, this very monastery is situated close to this very Aguileri you are talking about, his hometown. So it's a fulfillment of his dream, and I think wherever he may be in heaven, he must be a fulfilled man, he must be happy that he has actualized what he has sent to do in Mount St. Bernard.
Father Tansi, really, he's the center of our time. Personally, I can't say that I know him as a person, but all that I have heard about him, really, I heard that he went to England with the intention to bring monastic life to Nigeria, even though he died before achieving his intention. But thanks to God that now, through his intercession, monastic life in Nigeria is really flourishing. At least only Cistercian Benedictine in Nigeria now is up to 17. We have up to 17 monasteries. It is a work of Father Tansi. If not for any other thing, it is for his prayer. I will know he is in heaven interceding for us. And God has achieved his intention.
And we here also, we have a part in his life. And we are praying seriously for his final canonization. The life here, simple life, prayer life, living community life, doing everything as one family. So it helps me to fit in, because it's what I desire, to serve God with all my heart. And when I come in, I saw that the sisters, as few as they were at that time, they were really dedicated, committed. They totally give their life to God. So once you see others living the life you desire to live, it will help you to join in. So it helped me, because I see really the kind of spirituality I desired. I saw it here.
The abbot sent me a telegram. In those days, there was no cell phone. So he sent me a telegram. Father Tansi has died. The burial is in 2 days' time. So I got some Nigerian students with me in London, a few more in Leicester. And we were there. We took a train and then a bus. So we made it. We reached about an hour before the funeral mass in the monastery. Obviously, it is like a person told, your father is dead. The person is a bit disoriented. My father is dead. My guide, the one I look up to. On the other hand, knowing that he was a very holy man, I didn't have much doubt where he would end up after death. I knew he would, if anybody would go to heaven, it has to be Father Tansi. He has to be there. So it was that mixture of sadness, desolation, and also Christian hope. So that it wasn't all tears the whole way. I knew his health was not the best. There was no coffin. It was a simple makeshift rafter in which the body was wrapped. I was struck by the radical poverty, simplicity of the burial, full of faith, but full of simplicity, the very opposite of extravagance.
The enthusiasm of Nigerians, especially among the Igbos, for the return of the relics was much, which led Archbishop Stephen Ezeanya, then the Archbishop of Onitsha, to request Vatican for the exhumation of the body of Blessed Tansi. And that was granted. And the exhumation itself started on the 12th of September, 1986 in England. This was done by the monks of St. Bernard. They were very kind. They did everything. They provided all the facilities. The same day the exhumation started, the body was pulled out. It was pulled out in a mud of water because they told us that the day he was buried, they made water and just dropped the body there. That time, the monks were not being buried with coffin. He was lying only on a board, a plank. The body was not intact. What we found was the essential bones that remained. The skull was still almost intact. As I said, all the bones were recovered. They were treated, and the treatment took about 3 days. On the last day he was leaving, the monks gathered and gave him a welfare send-off. They had a mass in which more than 100 priests attended, including the Bishop of Nottingham, who was there, and the 3 bishops that went for the exhumation from Nigeria, Bishop of Biafra, Bishop Ezeanya, and Bishop Brian Osangan of Calabar. They were all there. Then the body was flown back on the British Airways and landed in Lagos, where he stayed for another 27 days for the reasons he cannot continue to Onitsha immediately. And I think that's the much.